Hi everyone, it's your girl Jaymie and your favorite astrologer. Today I want to talk about the karmic promised success that we all have access to right now on a personal and collective level, thanks to Saturn being in Pisces for the next couple of years. And in true Saturnian fashion, I'm going to be teaching you guys the exact steps, the instructions on what you can do, the steps that you can take in order to access this success that's available to all of us. And this is because Saturn represents success because it rules Capricorn. It's about making corrections. It's about commitment, responsibility, creating structures and systems that lead to success and all of these amazing things. And Pisces is an area where we might be a little bit lazy, and but it's also the sign that is where we have the most vulnerability. And because it's the last zodiac sign, it's inclusive and embodies all of the zodiac signs. So this is a really excellent time where we get to have access to this wonderful support, protection, boundaries, success, stability, reliability, energy from Saturn that we can use to create success in the area of our lives where we are the most vulnerable, where we may have been the most victimized, and where we're going to be the most receptive in receiving this success and support, because Pisces is the most receptive receiving sign. And being receptive, being able to receive support is such a fundamental part of success. And so there are three areas in particular that I often think about when it comes to the reasons why we don't have the success that we desire. And this is something that Saturn in Pisces is going to be supporting us in. And these are the fear of failure, fear of success, and systemic discriminations, disadvantages, things of that nature. So I'm going to break down how each of these things can show up and how you can use the Saturn in Pisces energy to work through this. So when it comes to our fear of failure and fear of success, that's very much on a personal collective level. That's very Capricorn energy. It's about structuring yourself, showing up as a leader, overcoming our chronic fears. Chronic fear rules astrology. Chronic fears rule Saturn, are ruled by Saturn. And so when it comes to your fear of failure, or any type of self-sabotaging fear that you have, whether it's fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of commitment, the things that get in the way, the things that hold you back, things that make you feel bad. These are chronic fears that Saturn in Pisces is where you feel the most vulnerable here. And we all know on some level that it's if we want to progress in life, make improvement, it's important to confront these fears, to address them, overcome them, process them, let them go so that we can move forward in our lives. And yet a lot of times there can be trauma triggers and fears, and just even being exposed to it can actually be emotionally, psychologically detrimental and harmful to your well-being. But with Saturn is about creating protections, boundaries, a sense of stability, foundation, and support. So it's a great opportunity to connect and set an intention and ask Saturn to support you and say, hey, you know what? I really want to work through these fears that have been holding me back. So Saturn, I ask you to protect me, create a sense of boundaries and barriers, help me to feel safe so that I can address these vulnerable things in my life, in areas of my life, and feel safe so that I'm not going to be trauma paralyzed. That's something that tends to show up. So there is this avoidant response that people do. And I've noticed this pattern to be especially true for people who have strong Pisces in their chart, or Gen Zs. These are generalizations, of course. This isn't everyone, but there are astrological, cultural considerations that lead to this. Pisces is the most vulnerable sign. If you watch some of my other videos, this is something that I discuss. And it's not that Pisces are weak and little bitches. That kind of misinformation just shows ignorance, because Pisces embodies all of the zodiac signs, has access to more of the zodiac signs than any other sign, but it's also the sign because it's also very receptive. And so this can also make people the most vulnerable. Pisces are represented by fish that can't speak, doesn't have arms to protect itself, or legs to run away. And so there is a certain level of sensitivity and risk that Pisces have, but Saturn is here to protect us now more than ever. And Gen Zs are much more sensitized to the generational psychological planets, and every generation takes on the responsibilities, the burdens, the karmic lessons that the earlier generations haven't been addressing. And so a lot of times the previous generation, we've been normalizing trauma, problematic things. So now Gen Zs are coming along, they're naturally more highly sensitized so that they can't and won't tolerate it. And so there is this level of vulnerability that they are struggling with. And oftentimes what I've noticed that what they do is a lot of times they'll be like, oh, I can't deal with this right now because there's a lack of, like, sometimes there's a lack of commitment, responsibility, accountability, and there's like an avoidance that shows up because they're like, I need to practice self-care. This is traumatizing me, so I need to step away. And that's very much a true and real thing. But the problem with that is it's a trauma response. It's an avoidance trauma response. And it's a symptom management oriented necessary coping mechanism, but it doesn't lead to long-term resolution. And yet it's like, what do you do if you're constantly traumatized, but you need to confront it, right? Now is an excellent time to be able to do this. You're going to be more protected and more easily be able to address these fears that are holding you back. So think about, like, going back to elementary school, the who, what, where, why, when, how thing, right? When it comes to your fears, these are the instructions, okay? Think about what is holding you back. Or no, it's starting with who. Who are you now? And who do you want to become? What's keeping you from being the person that you want to be? What are the things that are holding you back? The specific fears. What can you do to work through this? In what situations do these things arise? When do these situations arise? When these situations arise, how can you change it? How can you implement corrections? Where did you learn these fears? And think about where you learned these fears and like when you get triggered in your adult current life, but also in your childhood, because these are karmic lessons. Our fears are something that we developed early in our childhood, our traumas. 80 to 95% of our habits are ruled by our subconscious mind before our analytical mind even developed. So taking a look at your childhood is going to be really beneficial. So look at, where did you learn this? Where do these fears show up in my adult life? Who, what, where, when do they show up? Why do they show up? Why is it holding you back? Why are you attached to it? How can you resolve this? How have you resolved this? How do you want to resolve this? Take these questions, really take the time to explore them. And more than likely, if you're watching my astrology channel, if you're committed to self-growth, then these are questions that you've probably asked yourself in the past. But right now, because of the transits, it's going to be a lot easier to get the answers that you need because you have that success-oriented, that committed energy that's here to support you. So take a look and do those things. Look at what that address those things, specifically the chronic fears and stuff. This is going to be really good because Saturn rules chronic fears, and Pisces is about letting these things go. So also look at, like, who do you need to be, like, in order to get these things, as in, like, what do you have to let go of? When is the best way to let go of this? Where should you let certain areas go? How should you go about letting these things go? Using sort of that, like, Pisces supportive energy is going to be really beneficial. Now, when it comes to fear of success, this is because our nervous system regulates to our chemical production, and whenever we try to deviate from that, even if the change that we're trying to make is beneficial, it can be really overwhelming, and it can be perceived by our nervous system as a threat. And so then it's what motivates us to kind of stay where we are. And it's an understandable thing on like on a physiological, neurological level, but that doesn't change the fact that if you want to change and grow, like, there has to be something that's different, right? And I think that there's not enough discussion around preparing your nervous system and your mind and your body for success. Like, some people, like, we could be in a trauma response in our day-to-day life. So the changes that we make can be either a fight response, we could be in flight, be paralyzed, it could be fawn, and you're just people pleasing, like, you just never know. And so those are things that aren't going to be sustainable to your success. And literally trying to achieve success is traumatizing to our nervous system. And so letting our body know that we are safe is such an important part. And part of that is exposing ourselves, giving us small doses of what it is that we want, and priming and preparing our body for success so that it's not freaking out and it doesn't run away and it doesn't self-sabotage in order to go back to its baseline setting, which is where you don't necessarily want to be at, you know, like you want to progress beyond that. And a great way to do that is to microdose yourself, expose yourself in small doses to success, the kind of success that you want. So think about what success looks like for you. How do you want to achieve that? And expose yourself to little doses of that every day so that you, over time, so that you regulate your nervous system to that. This is going to be really helpful, really beneficial. And so Saturn represents work, correction, right? Like chronic fears, whatever that is. And Pisces is about receiving support. And so that's a big thing when it comes to success. Support is so important. And this is where, in order to be successful, processing your traumas is so important, because the best businesses have people that are supporting them. And the world that we live in, it's designed to be more isolating and divisive than is actually healthy for humanity. And we've normalized it. So part of achieving success is microdosing that success, whatever that looks like for you, and also giving yourself permission and receiving support. That's very Venus, that's very healing energy. And so I would say a great way to do this is to allow women to support you. In this patriarchal society that we live in, we are told that women hate on other women, women get pit up against each other and stuff like that. But when you work through your issues with women and stuff, like the planets that represent women for me in my chart, the moon and Venus, are really have challenging aspects. So growing up, I had a lot of negative experiences with women, and now I have like an amazing collection and resource of women that just support me so much. And it's so interesting because I was just talking to my best friend yesterday who was a Capricorn, so she is a Saturn, she supports me in my success, and I wanted like support in an easy way. I didn't want the details, in a very Pisces sort of a thing, for graphics and tech stuff. And she straight up told me, she was like, you know, you should join these Facebook groups that are run by women that do graphics, because she said the women will be really supportive, be really quick to help you and stuff like that. There's just, and I think that's something that oftentimes we forget. I mean, as women, we are designed to carry children, to give birth. I mean, we are designed to be the ultimate support unit for, I mean, we are more than just baby makers, of course, and whether you decide to have children or not, that doesn't change the fact that we are designed to be so innately supportive. And so I would say, in order to achieve success, Saturn is friends with Venus. So allow Venus to support you, talk to women, do nice things for yourself, take care of yourself, do things that feel good, that connect with your physical body. This could also be going online. Saturn, it rules the internet because it rules Aquarius, which is about the internet, talking with friends, allowing support from women. And it doesn't have to be women, it can be music, other things that Venus represents. It could be men who are artists or musicians who have a very harmonizing quality for you. Maybe they're Tauruses or Libras, or they have strong Venus in their chart, or they have Venus in their rising sign, or, you know, something to that effect. But allow more of that Venusian support into your life. And as far as like microdosing your success and how that can look like, that's really unique for every individual. So I don't know how that's going to be for you, but giving myself as an example, I have Saturn right now in my 9th house, which is about astrologers. I'm an astrologer in Pisces, where I have my natal sun there. I'm a Pisces sun, and the sun is about my career. So I am structuring and getting more strategic and more systematic in my astrology business as an astrologer. And this is something that's going to be really supportive for me. Wherever you have Saturn in your chart, this is really important. You want to use the energy a little bit every day. We're talking 10, 15, 20 minutes, nothing big. It's not like a big planet. It's not like greedy, like Jupiter, where you need to feed it a lot. Like Saturn is a very humble portion kind of a planet, but it's the planet of consistency. So take the time to engage with where Saturn is in your chart, both natally and in Pisces, and the house that it's in, that area of your life. Focus on it a little bit every day. And so for me, my success looks like I want to systemize things, and so I am putting in that effort. And so I want to be successful. What does that look like, right? So recently in my apartment, my concierge hosted a catering event for one of the residents who wants to also do another catering event with astrology. So we were talking about doing a pop-up, and she knows someone that she wants she wants them to do the art, and she wants to manage the whole thing. She wants to be in charge of the food, and I show up and I do my astrology jam session. I'm like, I love that. That's such a great way to use Saturn and Pisces energy. It's a collaboration, and I show up and I'm going to do my thing and stuff. And that's a great way to sort of use that energy. And so I'm looking at collaborating, taking steps, seeing what that looks like. So I am envisioning, because I'm a very visually oriented person. And it's so funny because in my chart, my moon is my chart ruler, which represents my home, and it's in my 4th house of home, right next to Pluto, which rules astrology, and it rules my 5th house of my astrology business. So it makes sense that it's like, oh, astrology at my home, there's some connection there. So I'm envisioning going to my neighbor's home in the apartment complex. I imagine going to the 17th floor, the 15th floor. People are requesting astrology readings for me, where I'm doing small VIP groups of 5 people doing astrology readings in the comfort of their own home. I've worked a lot of trade shows before in the past. I've been a product specialist, and I've had anywhere from 24 hours to a week memorizing like 100 pages worth of product information for Panasonic, Sony, Samsung. And I've never worked in astrology convention. So I'm setting the intention of working, I'm dreaming, that's Pisces energy, right? Every day, consistently envisioning myself doing these things, but I'm also taking these steps as well. I'm looking at, okay, well, where are these astrology conventions? What are their requirements, right? I'm being strategic. But even just the envisioning in a passive way, because Pisces is a passive sign, just dreaming about it in that area of my life is a way that I am engaging with that success energy. So there's a lot more that goes into it, but it just goes to show you how versatile this, the way you can use this energy is. It can be passive dreaming because of Pisces. It could be structuring the details. You have to do both, but doing just anything a little bit every day is going to be really important, microdosing yourself to that level of success. When I'm watching astrology videos, my astrology teachers, I'm imagining having a conversation with them, collaborating with them. I'm coming up with ideas on how I can collaborate with them on certain events, on certain things. I am normalizing my nervous system to getting used to this level of success. So that's sort of a way that you can use that energy with when it comes to fear of success. Now, the other thing is there's going to be a correction on a collective level as well. So when it comes to stuff like that, this is very much about Pisces representing people that are the most vulnerable. So this is like systemic discriminations, financial gender gaps, bullshit racism. There's things related to looking at, basically it'll be really useful to find resources that help with these sorts of things, with gay rights, with trans rights, financial opportunities and educational resources and stuff like that, because Saturn is about organizations, and there's going to be more of these opportunities that are going to be available. So keep an eye out for these sorts of things. Like, there's so many things that we normalize that are challenges for us, but start to become aware of, like, what are the challenges, what are the blocks, what are the obstacles, what are the barriers, and then start looking for those resources and say, is there a resource available for me on how to do this? Whether it's grant funding, educational resources, there are different ways that you can do this, and there's going to be more of this that's going to take over, because Saturn is a planet that either punishes or rewards, and Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius. Saturn rules success because Capricorn rules success. Capricorn represents people in power. And because of that, Capricorn is one of the planets that rule politicians. And politicians are people in power that, for the most part, unfortunately, are abusing their resources and stuff. And there are systemized regulations and stuff that are keeping people at a disadvantage. And so Saturn is going to go and punish these people, take that power to destroy those systems, and redistribute that power to Aquarius, which is like Saturn is going to redistribute that to Aquarius, which is society, everyday people, large groups of people and stuff. And Pisces is about generosity, compassion, charity organizations, the victimized. So these are areas where, look up online. I belong to with my state assembly, I'm part of their email. So I get all sorts of information on resources that are available and stuff like that. One thing that this made me think of is years ago, I went to my a library, and this is in Los Angeles in the Little Tokyo Library. And it was just on a whim. I went to pick up a book, and they were offering free eye exams, and you can choose like the eyeglasses that they had available, and everything was free. And so that's a very Saturn and Pisces sort of a thing. Saturn is about correction. Pisces is being charitable, right? And so I literally was able to get this generous offer that created this correction. And for me, like I get an eye exam every 2 years. And that really sucks because people who wear glasses, like we literally, our vision tends to get bad and deteriorate pretty quickly, and it's a lot more sooner than like when the next time I'm eligible for a free eye exam. So one of the things that I want to keep an eye out for is to look for resources like that. Like literally, it was so much smoother, successful, and efficient at the library than me going to see my optometrist, because nobody knew about it. Saturn is about blocks, so it was kind of like shadowed. People didn't know. Pisces is very receptive. I'm a Pisces sun sign. Everything was just so efficient, productive, and stuff like that. So this is just an example of how that can look like. But basically, this is to say, keep an eye out for ways that you can be supported. And as far as how you want to contribute, how you want to support on a collective level in order to make sure that people are benefiting and all of that stuff, you can take a look at like Saturn representing Capricorn and Saturn representing Aquarius and participate in those ways. So this can be on a collective level, the way that you contribute, because the Saturn energy, you have to work on it. You have to feed it. So I already gave you some instructions on how you can work through your fear of failures or your self-sabotaging habits on a personal level, your fear of success. And then now, like I mentioned, ways that you can receive support, but also how you can contribute to the support as well. This is looking at maybe if you have a boss who has been just really shady and fucked up, like looking at, all right, what are some ways, like reporting the boss so that they can get punished, so that there can be a correction that gets implemented. There's going to be a lot more of like a corrective like inclination now more than ever. You can think about how you can show up as a more compassionate leader, how you can improve your work environment, how you can create more systems and strategies that make it easier to do things, to make things a little bit more efficient and automated, because Pisces is about escaping day-to-day responsibilities. So it's not about taking all of these micro steps and plans and stuff. So how can you be more productive and efficient in that area? The other way on a collective level is connecting with the Aquarian energy. You can get politically involved, sign petitions. I know people who host like political parties, and people show up and it's a potluck and everyone brings something and people talk about what's going on politically. They explain things for people who aren't familiar with what's going on, and people ask questions and they just educate each other. That's a way that you can get involved. There are ways that you can get involved at promoting awareness and collaborating online in different organizations, communities, and stuff. I would say pick an area, something that you want to participate and contribute in, that you feel that there's just been a lot of shadiness, and look at ways that you can contribute to elevate society on that level. This is going to be something that's going to be really, really beneficial. There's so many ways that you can really work through this energy. These are just some examples that I'm providing, but the planets manifest in 4 different ways: on an emotional level, psychological level, physical, and spiritual level. So with the examples I gave, you can do it in a way that emotionally provokes you. You can do it in a way that's more cerebral and psychological, which is more my style. You can take more physical action, do actual steps and stuff, which you should do anyways. Or you can manifest it on a spiritual level. And this is a great way to do that because Pisces is a spiritual sign. And so incorporating that is going to be really valuable. And this can be even as simple as, I would say right now more than ever, engaging with prayer and intention setting is going to be so good, because you don't want to get so heavy into the systemized stuff that you neglect the Piscean aspect of the esoteric spiritual element domain as well. And this is so important because I'm not a particularly religious person, and I used to really struggle with religion because well, that too, but with prayers, because I felt like that belonged to religion. And I realized how much I was operating out of Asian American trauma, in that I read this amazing book called Money Magic, and it connects you with like the energy of money and how to be more receptive to it. It's a very esoteric spiritual book. And one of the assignments it gave is, it said for 30 days, do a prayer. And the reason why is because it says that you need to have self-confidence in order to pray. Because if you don't have a certain level of like self-confidence, then there's sort of this resistance, hesitation of receiving support, asking for things, some of the things that I mentioned that are so important to success, because we feel like we have to earn it. We don't just want a free handout. That's the mindset that I was in. But that's a very Asian American mindset. Like in the Asian culture, like you have to earn every little shit, and you're still like not considered to be all that. Like you can be valedictorian, you can be a doctor, you can be this, and you can make a fuck ton of money, and like your parents and your family are still just kind of like, really, like this is all that you accomplish. So there's this constant need to like feed and like this like sense of inadequacy. And as an American, there's a lot of things where we normalize like we have to work for things. In other countries, there are more basic human rights that are offered, and people are taken care of and aren't struggling nearly as much as Americans are. And so right now more than ever, because we are making a correction in society, this is an excellent time on an individual level, which is going to have a macro collective impact. If you're not someone who is inclined to this, even more so, get into the practice of prayer. Get into the habit of asking for the things that you want, being open to receiving it. And if that's uncomfortable for you, start off with intention setting. Say, hey, this is what I want. This is why I want it. This is why I believe I deserve it. And aim to get to the place where you can just be like, hey, universe, this is what I want. Please bring it to me. Like that isn't to say that you can bypass shit and that you can't get a free ride, but you need to learn to feel comfortable declaring the things that you want. This is so absolutely important, and prayer is going to really help with that, because Pisces is the most receptive sign. It's about surrendering, it's about trusting. And so basically, Saturn in Pisces is basically structure plus faith equals Saturn and Pisces. You want to have structure and you want to have faith. You want to include that spirituality. And a great way to do that is just doing a little bit of prayers every single day, meditating, sleeping. This can look like swimming every day. Pisces is water, doing something consistent. And wherever Saturn is in your chart, this is a great time to work on that area of your life. And you can actually turn your birth chart into an astro clock, where it'll tell you, depending on your specific placements, there are certain activities that you're going to be more efficient and productive at during certain times of the day, and it's unique to your placements. So if this is something that you want to get a reading on, I do offer that. It's called Astro Clock. So reach out to me and I can offer you that, and that's a good way to use where Saturn is in your chart as well. This is especially valuable for everyone, but also this is like something that's like this holy grail for Pisces, because Pisces by design are ungrounded. It's about escaping day-to-day responsibilities, duties, which is what like Saturn is all about. And like for Pisces, it's very difficult to be consistent and stuff. And for some of us, it can actually, depending on your aspects, it can make you feel unwell. It's something that I have. And so for me, spontaneity is really important. But we live in a world that's very structured. So it can be like, for Pisces, we don't live in a world that's designed for us, so there can be all of these challenges. And so the next couple of years, this is going to be especially beneficial for us because Saturn is a long-term committed planet. So if in the next couple of years you commit to this energy, you put in the work, you're doing you're being responsible, you're being consistent, which is something that you're inclined to do right now because of the transits anyways, it's literally going to support you for decades because Saturn is a long-term planet that rewards hard work. So if you are being consistent now, this is especially great because one of my favorite quotes is minimum effort, maximum results. And right now, Saturn in Pisces is just that. Because 2 years may seem like a long time, but when you think about it and you blink, it goes by so fast. So if you spend this 2 years just really being committed to the areas that I mentioned and you take the steps that I recommended, then you can literally systemize success in areas of your life that are related to Capricorn, Aquarius, your 10th house or your 11th house. That's Saturn energy, that's work, obligations, all of commitments, all of these things, friendships, and it's going to literally benefit you for decades. Putting in 2 years worth of work for something to last 10, 20, 30 years, like, lifelong, like, outcome and stuff. And it's also going to change your mindset. Pisces is a mutable sign. It's about letting things go. It's about psychological downfalls, but it's also very malleable. And Saturn is very like strict and rigid, but it's also about correction. So you can use this energy to get out of a fixed mindset and go into a growth mindset. Now, of course, every planet's placements have positive and negative aspects and stuff. So Pisces can, not just Pisces, but Saturn, for example, can cause delays and obstacles. And these are things that can just happen because of, like, specifically where Pisces is, specifically the house that Pisces is in your chart. This is an area that can be delayed. That's just one of the manifestations. But another thing is that sometimes these blocks occur because there's a better way. And so if you make a correction, you can start creating more transitions and more efficiency, productivity, just a smoother outcome, set prayers, kind of just learn to be receptive and intuitive, systemize your intuition. This is a great way to recognize it. So rather than getting frustrated at being like, what the fuck, Jaymie said that this was going to be an efficient time and things are going to be systemized. Why am I hitting this block? Because there's probably something to correct. But also you still have to practice patience as well. And if you hit up this block, honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it because one of the things that I'm concerned about is that particularly with strong Pisces, we might OD and feel this like, oh, it's refreshing. Oh, finally systems and Saturn is going to work for me. And we get so deep into that we forget our spirituality. So when there is a block or a delay that takes place, take that opportunity to be Piscean. Meditate, give yourself a foot massage, pray, connect to angels, spirit guides, aliens. A lot of times people think aliens are Aquarius, which it is, but the 12th house is also about faraway places, which are also aliens are far away from us, right? So these are things that you can connect with in a very spiritual sort of a way. There's other things that I also really want to talk about that's really important. I actually forgot about boundaries because I feel like the vocabulary boundaries is for people who need it, and I have such good boundaries that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But this is a great opportunity, a great opportunity for Pisces to create long-lasting boundaries. The thing with this placement is that right now, the things that we commit to is likely to be successful, which is really great because a lot of times we'll put in effort and it doesn't mean that we're gonna achieve success in that area of our life, right? And we're trying and we're wondering why that shit ain't working. Right now, it's a karmic promise success. That's the beautiful thing about this placement. So if you are a Pisces or you have an area of your life where you're struggling with boundaries, that's probably where you have Pisces, like that's probably like, you can look at the house, the area of your life that Pisces is in, that's probably an area where You might be more vulnerable, and this is where you might have a harder time creating healthy boundaries, especially with Pisces. This is a great way and a great time to practice boundaries. And there's both a holistic approach, which is preventative care, establishing a baseline, and then symptom management oriented approach that I recommend for creating boundaries. So the first thing is Pisces is a dreamy sign, right? So I want you to envision like your dream boundary situation, you know, your mom, your dad, your sisters, your friends, whoever the fuck that, you know, who you want, the people in your life who you want providing you with more boundaries and more respect. Think about what that looks like. I want you to dream about it for a second and then create systems. How can you do that? Right? And get used to practicing it, saying it, doing it, embodying it, all of these things, because otherwise you're going to be operating out of habit. So many times people will just be like, oh, I'm just going to say this next time. But if you don't practice saying it on your own through repetition, through corrective energy, the chances of experiencing success is harder because of that, because you're not utilizing the energy of Saturn, which creates boundaries, which supports and facilitates you. So this is something that you really want to take advantage of that's just really valuable. And so this can look like writing a text out or practicing a speech and saying it and just letting people know. And this is really beneficial because when you think about Saturn representing boundaries, Saturn rules Capricorn and Aquarius, but Capricorn comes first as the leader. It calls the shots. So I want you to fucking speak up, and you want to be like, hey, this is what it's about. You know, but do it with compassion, wisdom, understanding, thoughtfulness. Use that Pisces energy, but remember, you are a fucking leader. You let people know what your fucking boundaries are, right? And you do that first. It starts with you, okay? And then you collaborate with other people. And then you collaborate and communicate with other people. That is Aquarius energy. But I would say starting with that baseline is going to be, and that foundational approach is going to be more beneficial than just letting someone know, hey, no, I can't do that. No, I can't do this. Because then you're going to trigger people. You're going to trigger yourself. You're likely to trigger other people because people are so used to you saying yes that they're going to be thrown and they're going to be like, wait, what's going on? And blah, 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 blah. And it can trigger chronic fears and all of that stuff. And so rather than operating out of that instinctive place, there's a lot of benefit and value by operating from a space where you start with Capricorn and then you end up being Aquarius, because then you're using foundational, like a solid, like baseline to get started. And this is really, really beneficial. I think another thing that's really valuable when it comes to boundaries is being mindful about what you say. I actually had this discussion with my bestie who's a Capricorn sun. She's a Leo rising, and she has Pisces in her 8th house of trauma. So this is the area where she is the most, she is the most vulnerable when it comes to trauma, which a lot of us are, but like for me, like because of my placement, like trauma is like where I come alive, and I am just so in my zen and flow and stuff like that. With her, it's a little different. And being a people pleaser, a pushover, having a hard time with boundaries, that's a trauma response. And she told me one day, she was like, I need to stop being such a people pleaser. And I was like, you need to stop saying that you're a people pleaser, and you need to start fucking admitting that you, when you're doing that, you're being self-disrespectful. And she was like, ooh, that's so good. And I bring this up now because I wouldn't say that to my friends who have strong Pisces or strong Cancer and stuff, because they're going to be too hypersensitized to that, and I don't want to run the risk of them taking that constructive feedback and turning it into a way for them to be more critical and feel shittier about themselves. But I'm bringing this up now because it's a very Saturn and Pisces. It's a very corrective approach and understanding and wisdom behind it. Because growing up, I've always heard the words a pushover, and now it's people pleaser. And I just feel like people pleaser is a more pleasant vocabulary. Like there's a lot of shame associated with pushover, which can be problematic, but when you say people pleaser, it just feels like it's easier, more comfortable to be in that space. It's like, why would you want to move out of being a people pleaser? Like, I want to be able to please people. Like, I want to help people. I want to support people. Like, And so I feel like that vocabulary can sort of like perpetuate problematic behavior because it just doesn't sound that bad. I'm not saying say something that makes you feel like shit, but recognize it for what it is. And with Saturn being in Pisces now more than ever, you're going to be more durable. It's going to be easier for you to realize this. And one of my biggest pet peeves that I notice with so many of my friends and people I care about is that, like, it's one of those things. I tell one of my friends all the time this. I'm like, stop being so understanding that you're disrespecting yourself. Like, just because you see things from the perspective of other people doesn't mean that you should ignore yourself in the process. And that's so easy for people to do when you're a Pisces or wherever you have Pisces in your chart, because Pisces is a sign of invisibility. It's about confusion, ambivalence. So you kind of lose yourself in your consideration and your thoughtfulness of other people, and then you lose yourself. But right now, it's a different thing. I want you to sit down and think about, okay, where do you want boundaries? Where am I not receiving boundaries? What kind of support do I want? How does that look like? And asking for it at the end of the day. Like, that's something that's so important, because, and also changing your mindset around that and realizing that you are a part of that. When someone asks for your help because they really, really want it and this and that, and you don't like the way people are treating you, but you're trying to people please them, so you're tolerating that shit. I want you to think about it from a different perspective of, like, I wouldn't do that shit to other people. Why should I do this? Like, Capricorn is success oriented, which is ruled by Saturn. Saturn rules Aquarius, which is very collaborative. It's really cerebral. It's really logical. So think about it from like a logical, successful oriented approach. Are you going to put up with that shit? Does it even make sense? No. You know, it's like, are you going to disrespect someone like that? No. Then why is it okay for other people to disrespect you with that kind of shit? You know, like, start to recognize it for what it is, call that shit out, and really, really, really work on your boundaries now, because like I said, this placement is going to have lasting results. And to a degree, if you are having a hard time with boundaries, I think there's a combination of, like, you have to learn to let certain people go, because certain people just don't want to change and grow. That's Pisces. That's letting people go. But it's also about kind of making a correction. And in a way, if this is a pattern that you have with everyone and anyone, because you're not even letting people know that, like, you're not okay with being treated a certain way, that's a you thing that you need to take accountability for. Make those corrections now, because it's going to be a lot easier. Because sometimes people, they, like Pisces people, don't even realize that they're being a pushover. And so they don't even think or know to create these boundaries, which is why I recommend setting the stage. Don't wait until an opportunity presents itself for you to be like, oh, you know what, I'm not okay with that, because it might just confuse you and you might not even realize it. And a misuse of Saturn and Pisces energy can be that you are blocked from the opportunity to heal, you know, and to create boundaries and stuff. So it's like, you want to use the positive energies of Pisces and Saturn, because this is so important. You know, there's negative things related to Saturn, because Saturn is considered to be a malefic planet. But Saturn is considered to be a malefic planet because that was the identity it was given in ancient times when astrology was first created. But that's also because of the time during back then, the mortality rate was shorter. So Saturn takes 36 years to mature, and Saturn rules older people. Like Saturn comes alive more in like your 40s, your 50s and stuff, but people weren't living past the age of 20. So people back then in ancient times, in ancient astrology, thought, oh, Saturn is a malefic. And yes, Saturn is a malefic planet in modern times as well, especially in medical astrology. It represents deteriorating and things that atrophy and break down and stuff like that, slow down, harden things, and just create restrictions. And that can be malignant, that can be malefic, absolutely. But in modern times, the mortality reasons why Saturn was considered to be malefic no longer really applies to us in certain conditions. So this is why it's so important to recognize and learn why certain things are what it is, but just know that those are baselines. You don't have to be stuck there. Okay, when you hear things like something is in exaltation, rulership, something's in detriment, something's in fall, that's your baseline. That's not where that's where you start. You don't have to, that's not your middle, that's not your end. You can choose that outcome. The planets are always orbiting, you know, things are being shuffled around. There's multiple branches of astrology and systems and stuff, and depending on what you're studying, they give different meaning to things. So don't feel like you were stuck, and just recognize that there is a lot of beautiful energy that's associated with Saturn and Pisces. One of them being that if you're dealing with addiction, Pisces is the sign of addiction, and it particularly rules alcoholism and addiction that's generally associated especially with like escapist tendencies. So if you're dealing with any type of addiction, this is an excellent time to make those corrections, to create that block, to cut cords. Now is a better time more than ever. Saturn transits every sign for about 2.5 years. So, but there are 12 signs to go through. So right now is like such a good time if you are dealing with addictions and challenges and stuff like that. Like so many times people put in effort and it's not sustainable, or they relapse, or they have these challenges. And there are astrological considerations. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of curious to check out. I watched something where Dax Shepard talked about how many times, I want to say maybe he relapsed maybe 7 or 8 times or something like that, like a lot of times. And when someone saw his journal, he said that, like, where it notated that, he said that he felt so ashamed because he failed so many times, where the person who watched it was just like, oh no, are you kidding me? Like, I am so impressed. Like, you persevered so many times, you kept going so many times, and look at all of this tremendous success that you've achieved as a result of this. Like, it was just such a different perspective. And how much you want to bet when he felt motivated to quit, when he relapsed, there's probably astrological correlations with that. And so right now, more than ever, if you're dealing with addiction, this is something that Saturn is meant to last decades and a lifetime. This is an excellent time to create boundaries, corrections, restrictions, to change the area of your life where you're dealing with addiction. You can look at where Pisces is, what house it's in. You can look at your 12th house. And there's a lot of other things you can look at, Jupiter and Neptune, and like the ruler of your 12th house, ruler or rulers, the aspects that it has. Something that you can also do if you're struggling with addictions is look at your 12th house, which rules addictions. And the 8th house is about trauma processing, and reversals. So if you want to reverse your addictions, you're looking at the 12th house, and you want to count 8 houses from the 12th house. Okay, so in astrology, you count the 12th house with that. So that's 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, wait, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so you look at your 6th house. Oh, wait, that's not 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry. I was like, I know that's not right. It's the 7th house. So the 8th from the 12th is your 7th house. So if you're struggling with addictions and stuff, you can look at your, like, you can make corrections with Saturn, whatever house Saturn and Pisces is in, but you can also look at your 8th, you can also look at your 12th house and your 7th house. And this is another way to look at it, to see, like, this is a way that you can work towards reversing addiction. This might be outside of the scope of what you're familiar with. So working with an astrologer is something that can really help you with this. Someone who has more experience with trauma, psychology, astrology, someone who has a stronger knowledge in, I would say, Scorpio and stuff, and someone who has a strong understanding of the 8th house. And particularly, another thing I would say is, because you are dealing with, if you're dealing with addictions, in addition to the 12th house, you also want to look at your 8th house as well, and the best way for you to release traumas and things like that. This is going to be really beneficial as well. So working with an astrologer who's familiar with these things, who has a strong Scorpio, is going to be something that's really helpful. And looking at your 8th house can tell you the best way for you to process traumas and stuff like that, because there's so many different modalities that are really great and beneficial, but it can be incompatible to who you are. Like my bestie, she was totally trauma triggered when she did EMDR, but she's also not a good candidate for that. That's EMDR is eye movement deactivation. I don't know what the R stands for. And it's basically where they train you to do specific eye movement combinations. And what it does is it stimulates the trauma. This has been tremendously successful for war vets and people who tend to repress and suppress their traumas, people who are more disassociated from their body. Oops. But my friend, she has Pisces in her 8th house, so she is hyper traumatized by her traumas as it is. So the last thing she wants to do is to do something that further stimulates that. So sometimes it's not just about correcting the addiction. Right now is the best time, but also making sure that the way that you correct your addiction is compatible and suitable for you. So that's something to take a look at. You can examine it yourself, or if you want to work with an astrologer, you can definitely reach out to me. But these are areas that you want to take a look at in order to achieve success. So that's a lot of information, but I really kind of wanted to take the time to get into this rabbit hole and really explain this, because I feel like a lot of astrologers haven't shared this, which really kind of shocks me, because I feel like it's such important information, and using this energy is so absolutely important, taking this corrective approach. Yes, because Saturn is malefic, it's not always going to show up in these beneficial ways, and you can't prevent bad things from happening, but the planets manifest in 4 different ways: emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually. Some ways it's going to manifest beneficially, sometimes it's problematic, but the more you direct that energy towards positive things, towards ways that are ultimately supportive for you, and you're using that energy, there's less energy for Saturn to show up in more problematic ways. So this is a way that we can both personally and collectively contribute to elevating this amazing placement if and when it's used properly. I hope that this video has inspired you to look at what that's like. You have lots of options to go on. And in order to keep you structured and organized, I recommend comment below, tell me exactly what steps you're going to be taking, and go through the who, what, where, why, when if you feel inclined, and keep yourself accountable. Maybe work with another person about this. Work with an Aquarius, a friend using that Saturn energy, or a Capricorn, or do this in isolation with yourself. Pisces is a sign of isolation, or do it with another Pisces. So there's a lot of different ways to work with this energy, but definitely comment below with what you're going to do. And if you want more information about this, if you want me to make another video where I teach you basically how to use Saturn and Pisces depending on the house that it's in, comment below and make a request for me to make a Saturn and Pisces in each house video, and then I'll go ahead and do that for you guys. All right, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.